Shall I start, Hemant? It's 5:35. Okay. Okay, so on behalf of Creative Commons India, let me welcome you to this session. This is the third or the fourth, sorry, the fourth webinar on open education. We started off with one on the future of open education. We did one on open mapping, and we also had one live hands-on workshop on how do you actually give Creative Commons attribution to some of the work you do. Today's session was planned more for, or is planned more from the point of view of why open education is important in elementary education. We're looking at 6 years to 14 years. And I'm Michelle. I'm an educator at Tamarind Tree. Tamarind Tree is an organization that has been trying to redefine elementary education using technology for the last 10 years. And with me is Purvi Shah of Story Weaver and Pratham. Story Weaver is a fine example of how open educational resources or how a platform can really build access and equity to children. And she'll be talking about that later. I'd like to start with understanding why open educational resources matter in elementary education. Most of the sessions that I've attended so far have had a higher education faculty members, academicians, policymakers. There are very few people in elementary education, and this is one of the reasons we thought that we need to understand and project why OERs and Creative Commons and open education is important in elementary education. So I'd like to lay the foundation by saying that the problem today is that we don't see education as a right. We see it as a privilege. And this is one of the fundamental barriers to providing good quality education. The entire debate today must be framed in seeing education as a fundamental right, access to knowledge, information. As a citizen of this globe, I must have that right. And this is how the movement sort of plays. The goal of primary education in India is not yet achieved. There are various figures. The figures are not important, but you would all agree with me that there are many children out of school. There are 30 million children as per a census report. There are many more data that would show you that children drop out in class 6 or class 7. They don't continue with their basic primary education or secondary education. And of course, the quality of education in the school and the relevance and the context is become more and more redundant. And this is very important to sort of understand. Secondly, and most importantly, that the pedagogy and the content of the education system, particularly in the public education sphere, but also in the private sphere, is there's a huge dissonance with what you're trying to teach children and what they're experiencing in the world outside. The content, the curriculum, and what the student actually needs to survive in the society. The second and very dangerous trend that we've been seeing since India opened its markets is that education is becoming a marketable commodity. There's an increasing commodification of education and a privatization, and we'll be discussing this in slightly more detail about how this is the problem and therefore open education becomes a solution. Along with the increasing commodification and privatization, you also have the ownership of the new digital age, the new forms of communication and digital resources that are becoming proprietary in nature, and again against the spirit of education as a right and not a privilege. Please keep in mind that the debate is being framed continuously of education as a right. I live in a village in Dahanu Taluka called Sogwe. It's a tribal village, and this is still how the schools look. I mean, you are from different parts of India, and interestingly, public education when we were growing up, I mean, we were privileged to go to some sort of convent schools and so on, but the public education system still looks like this. It has hierarchy, rote learning. All sorts of exclusion is core part of its thread. Classrooms still look like this. Children still made to um, uh, lower than necessary. The spaces are still designed like that. The curriculum is out of context. So just to show you that this is where we are, and we strongly believe that in a country as inequitable as India, where there are structural inequities of poverty, culture, caste, economics, and at every level there is structural inequalities. If we want to build education equity, then the responsibility is ours as educators. This is the fundamental underlying reason why open becomes important to educators or to policymakers or to teachers or to anyone in elementary education. The society is structurally fragmented. The public schooling is outdated and redundant. The content and pedagogy is irrelevant to children, whether they live in the village that I'm living in or in the city. In the meantime, since the 90s, we have been opening markets, and historically you can see that private education is now an accepted reality. It wasn't so when we were growing up. We've all gone through education systems that have been largely equal, that have had different members of society in the same schooling setup. We've paid very little for education. In 2020, tech market has completely berserk. Everyone thinks that there is huge amount of money in education, and apparently there is. Byju's has raised significant amount of money globally. It's not just that it's in India. As a global venture capital funding, they got huge amount of money. Byju's, Vedantu, and Unacademy. And basically, what I'm trying to establish is that since the 90s, and particularly accelerated now in the 2000s, and now, of course, with the pandemic, people are further commodifying education and seeing education and the student as a commodity consumer relationship. And this is creating a very, very huge problem in the society, where education is not seen as a right, it's seen as a privilege. And and a lot of the edtech companies are now taking the responsibility of educating young children, coming from exclusion, coming from lack of access, coming from no equity. So just to let you know that often the discussions in the Creative Commons forums are talking about the problem is that the increased privatization and the increased amount of capital and money that is being fueled and pushed into the private sector is at every step of the way detrimental and disadvantage to the child living next door to a person like me, where I come from a village, but definitely to a child in this country, where education is becoming a commodity to be sold and transact, and the learner is becoming a consumer. This is a serious threat to saying that education is a fundamental right and education is something that we deserve to give the population of our country, particularly at elementary levels. I think that laid the foundation. Most of you would agree with me. However, sometimes these discussions are not. And now, what is the problem with with commodification? The problem with commodification is not simply the monetary aspect of the entire process, that I have to pay Byju's to access knowledge, I have to pay Vedantu to actually understand how electricity is generated, or I have to pay an academy to get a coach. It's not just the loss in terms of the economic opportunity, because there could be an answer that you could give a society the economic opportunity. Vedantu made its classes free during the pandemic. Byju's also released a lot of content and classes free during the pandemic, right? The problem is that it's an encroachment on the basic freedom of a society, starting with, say, a simple thing of a mystification of technology. The fact is that the platforms like Byju's, or I mean, these are just, I'm not, trying to finger point, is that there is a mystification of technology that comes along with the amount of capital that is put into a particular platform. Whereas people like us in the open education movement are saying that anyone here, whether it's Purvi or it's Fred or it's Chirag or it's Dee or it's Shweta or it's Zoya or Sarita, technology is for you to use. Technology is for your students to use. You can be empowered to use the technology you want. You can set up your own learning management platform, you can create your own videos, you can create your own simulations, you can create your own animations, you can collaboratively build knowledge and let it out. The problem with commodification, it creates a mystery around technology, where people feel that we need to go to an expert, where people feel learn we need to pay, or we need to access these kind of platforms. We are not capable of building these platforms or creating our own apps or content and so on. This is a very critical part of the commodification game that people don't understand. So inevitably, commodification and the excess flow of capital into private entities disempowers students, disempowers learners, disempowers schools, disempowers even the government to saying that we need now a corporate entity like Facebook to teach us what is artificial intelligence. Whereas the knowledge around artificial intelligence, or the knowledge around any of these new things, should be available publicly for any access. So this is the key problems with not just the user at a content level, but even the entire experience of you as a learner in this new technological age. You feel disempowered, you feel a consumer, you feel that you have no ability to actually set up and use these platforms yourself. So you get converted into a consumer. You are very scared about technology. Technology is all very complex, and you think that there are experts. They also, commodification brings huge hierarchies between collaborative learner communities and service providers, and the open education movement again would try to break that. And the owner of public knowledge is taken away from being in the public domain to being controlled by proprietary interests. So these are some of the reasons that we need to collectively, as a group of educators or concerned people, oppose the commodification of education, the proprietary control of knowledge, because these are the results of these impacts of this process. On the other hand, we are on our path. We are saying that education is still a state subject. The government is committed to, supposedly committed to, providing public education in the area. For instance, we live, there is children still have only Zilla Parishad schools as their option. Private schools like ours are very few, and however, it looks like the public infrastructure is slowly being dismantled. Only 3% of our GDP is being spent on education. The quality of education is dismal. I mean, all of you would agree on that. So on the one hand, we don't have a strong public infrastructure, and on the other hand, we have private entities who are increasingly seeing self-interest in education. uh, Fundamentally, I would like to bring out the point that you cannot hand over the fulfillment of a basic human right like education or access to healthcare or access to water to entities driven by self-interest. I mean, it's contradictory in itself. We should have opposed this. We should be collectively opposing it. Some of us are opposing it in our own little ways, but the fact of the matter is this is a basic human right. And you are now leaving this entire work of educating people who are deprived of good quality education for, say, 3 generations or 2 generations or even 1 generation, to entities that are driven by a completely different motivation, right? And this is the problem with the current model of privatization, commodification, and increased profit that companies and a lot of other people are seeing in technology, driven through education. So this is the ground reason why we would say that for elementary education, particularly, of course, for higher education, but for elementary education, which is a very critical age for the children, it's very, very critical for the society to have educated with their basic maths, basic English, basic things done at the elementary level from, say, 6 to 14, that education should remain a public good. So this is the ground on which we could establish why open education then becomes a response. The open education movement is a rebellion, is an opposition. The open education movement says, no, we disagree that education is commodified, knowledge cannot be owned, knowledge must be free like the air we breathe. These are things that the open education movement has been saying. And fundamentally, one couple of the reasons why we need to believe that the open education movement is critical is that it can change the way the society interacts with each other. The social relationships in a society can change simply because I sitting anywhere and I could release something in the public domain used by 500,000 people around the world. I could be a computer programmer, I could be a game developer, I could be a story writer, I could be a teacher, and I could come up with something just that everyone likes, the learner community likes, the user community likes. And this is changing the social relationships in the society. Who owns the technology, who controls the platform, who owns the resources, and who controls the resources, who owns the knowledge and who distributes the knowledge. The open education movement is playing a critical role in changing the social relationships in the society. It's changing the power equations in the society. We come from that position at Tamarind Tree that I'm going to talk talk about, that is, where I work, is part of the experiment where we say that underprivileged, marginalized children can not only have access because of open education movement, but can become contributors to the global open education movement by building their own games, by writing a nice story, by building collaborative knowledge. So I think fundamental to why we have been doing open education for 10 years is because we believe that it can bring some social justice into the system. It can change the social relationships. It can change the power dynamics through various levels. And I'll come to that later. But through various levels, we believe that the open education movement, and for the last 10 years, we've been experimenting how we can change these social relationships. Importantly, the open education movement says, and we've been adopting, that the learners are no longer just consumers of content or consumers of knowledge or consumers of platforms or consumers of apps. They become producers of knowledge. They become collaborators in knowledge building. And the open education platforms encourage that. Purvi will share how nicely Storyweaver actually treats every single person on their platform as a producer, or not just a user. It definitely, of course, builds access and equity. The children that you see in that image are using a tool called Pre, which is a really nice software built by some European coders, which have things like maths, English, science, logic, geography. And we've installed this in our school. And I mean, and children from a village are accessing very interestingly designed content, well thought content. This is an app that works from 2 years to 10 years. So it definitely builds access and equity. There is a global community of people building around the app called Gcompre, and it builds access. It's not just the point that it's free to download, but there's somebody working to translate it into Marathi, somebody working to translate it into Hindi, there's somebody working to improve the interface. So one piece, one product, and the millions or at least thousands of people trying to improve its friendliness, its applicability, is why the open education movement then builds access. The ownership is distributed in a small school like ours. Tamarind Tree is a little school located in a village in Dahanu. We were able to own and build our own servers. We were able to own and build our own operating system. We were able to customize things. We were not dependent on any proprietary software. We were not dependent on any kind of expertise. We could become experts ourselves. And owning and managing your own platforms has its own empowerment. um, the open education movement definitely is collaborative and participatory. There are many examples that we will discuss as we go along. uh, and critically, I think for us, the reason that we adopted open education is that it gave us a route to alter the way we do education. And by this we meant that because we were so dependent on technologies, we could break the classroom. We could have individualized learning paths. We could let children do sit in one classroom while some children are doing maths, others are doing science. All of this was possible because of digitization and technology, and definitely because of open technologies. So these are some of the points I'd like to share a little bit in detail of our model for the last 10 years, and how we were able to actually harness the open educational resources, the OERs, both in hardware and software from the world, bring them to our little school in Maharashtra, and build this entire model on open education. So, believing in this philosophy, we started our journey 10 years ago, where we said that we must build an open education model for tribal children. Tamarind Tree is a registered school with Maharashtra government. We have class 1 kindergarten to class 8, and we are entirely open. So this in the screen you'll see we have little Raspberry Pis, which are open hardware, and we customized a software from Debian, which we call Treebian, and we customize the software such that you have only open resources on your screen. So when the child uses the screen, there are of course the browser and the basic utilities, but also all games or mathematics or science tools which are from the open source world. So we were able to configure and customize our own OS for the children to use. And basically, the reason that we've been able to do this is that because there are people all over the world who are releasing their work in the open source domain, who are releasing their platforms, their softwares, their content, their hardware into the open source domain. So a small school like ours, with a very little budget, very little access to good quality technical people or teachers, we were able to set up an open education model. And we had an entire open ecosystem where we even had a video server running on an open source tool. We had a library server where we would link with Pratham and have all the Pratham open source books into our library server. And we ran a LMS driven by Moodle. So every single aspect of our school, from the hardware to the software, has been built on the open educational resources. And at the end of 10 years, we basically had, and we still do have, an open learning platform called My Big Campus. This is driven by Moodle. We started doing Moodle in 2012. At that time, when we installed an open platform for very young children, that to Adivasi children, people were very surprised that you're using so much of technology with children. But for us, using open technologies was the only way that we could provide equity and access, and, as I said, change the social relationships for the tribal children. They needed to participate, and they need to participate in the global world on an equal footing. And open education allowed us to do that. So we had Moodle. We have a platform called My Big Campus. We also experimented a lot from 2012 to 18 with the Big Blue button platform, which is here. And very frankly speaking, every time we'd ask volunteers to conduct online classes for our children using this platform prior to the pandemic, there was great hesitation. People wanted to come to our site to volunteer, and how will tribal children understand online? So there's been a great tussle for us to establish that even marginalized children sitting in very remote locations actually have access, actually understand digitization, and are quite good with technology. After the pandemic, it's been a different story. We've released all our platforms publicly, and we have pan-Indian children coming. So essentially, we were able to create this entire digital ecosystem around products that we hadn't developed ourselves, around solutions that were being developed by a global community. And what we were able to do is we were able to harness these global open source products, customize them for our own use, create a DIY team that understood how to customize, that spent time saying that we are learners here, we will not take convenient proprietary solutions, and build them for children who deserve to have high quality learning resources. So our open learning basket grew over the time. This is just for information. We obviously, all the learning that takes place on our LMS is available as an app, which is the Moodle app. We built an e-library, and we worked very extensively with Pratham and Storyweaver, and had a lot of this is when Storyweaver was also at this nascent stage. So we had a lot of books available online in local servers, so that children would click and then it's a local server. And we built our own operating system, which is sort of a derivative of Debian. And we were able to customize low cost single board devices like the Raspberry Pi that you see here, and also make it available to children. Parents of tribal children are more than happy to buy a Raspberry Pi, which is a 10,000-12,000 rupee investment, compared to, say, a laptop and so on. So over time, for us, the reason we adopted open e-learning solutions is, as I said, because fundamentally we believe tribal children have a right to access as high quality content. B, it was easy for us to be sitting in a remote location and customize solutions very quickly. And C, we think that proprietary solutions at the end of the day are not meant for children like this, which are which is most of the country. So this is what we have currently. And what we also found very good is that one of the reasons why we are saying that open education works or is important in elementary education is that you're able to fundamentally alter the way elementary education is being done. So if you want to change the rote learning, you want to change the classroom hierarchy, you want to give opportunity to children to learn at their own level, then open source technologies are giving you a path. You have a textbook compared to, say, 1,000 books that Storyweaver made available to us, again digitized, and again very easily accessible and downloadable. Moodle as an LMS allowed us. Moodle, we deployed it in a completely resource poor area. We had very poor internet in 2012 and 13. However, over time, we overcame the barriers of the internet, and because of using an open LMS like Moodle, which the learning was ours. The Moodle platform is a free software. You click it, you install it, you set up your server. We were able to change a lot of the way education is done. We, as you can see in the picture, we had children sitting in the chiku farm, driving their learning from the LMS. Teachers became facilitators. There was individual learning. We were able to completely break down the content delivery and the hierarchy. We were able to Children on our campus were able to do Scratch. They were able to do coding, and we were able to push the philosophy that, look, guys, nobody's going to come here to teach us. The Zilla Parishad school is a pathetic place. We want to access learning. Here are another set of global open educators who are doing things, releasing products in the open software, in the open world. Why don't we harness this for our own knowledge? Why don't we learn from what they are doing, and why don't we take learning into our own hands rather than waiting for good quality teachers to show up, or the state government to actually improve the public education system? Some of the OERs we've been using, we are not wedded to any OERs. OERs are a continuously fluctuating space, and we are committed to using them purely because they are in the OER space. We're not wedded, but the amount of OERs available in the elementary education space, and this is just a sample of them. We have been using, of course, all the Story Weaver and Pratham books in the digital format and the print format for the last 10 years. A lot of our maths learning is driven by Khan Academy, which is again a completely open platform. You can download the quizzes, you can adapt them, you can translate them into Marathi if you like, you can use them as it is, you can put your voice over and use the thing. People like us would never be able to get good quality maths teachers, but Khan Academy gave us a space where children from a rural background are competing with children from a Podar school in Bombay and taking part in the same maths competition because they have understood how Khan Academy works. And Khan Academy is a self-learning module, so the children were actually very, very they took that to that platform like this. So we've been doing maths on Khan Academy for several years. We use for ages like kindergarten to say class 4 5. We use things like TuxMath and TuxMate. These are open source softwares released. We use a lot of products from the KD environment. We've done GeoGebra, JFractions. We've been done using Scratch. We've been looking at FET. And as I said, it's a constantly evolving ecosystem that we would like to contribute to as well as gain from. And being users of open education resources also empowers us to communicate back to Moodle, the Moodle user community, communicate back to the Khan Academy community that, there are, your video was great, but if you were to cater to tribal children like the entire central Indian belt, why don't you also build a video like this? So we strongly believe that when we participate in the open education movement, when we are right now, we may take 3 generations to produce a product like Khan Academy, but our children can very well play a role, or the the educators on our campus can very well play a role to direct that Khan Academy produces videos for tribal children, which has never been a priority. So for us, participating in the open education movement has been about changing the social relationships, has been about saying who decides what knowledge is put out there, who owns the knowledge, who owns the technology, who owns the platform, and can we as educators, as communities, as rural communities, as people committed to bringing good quality education to children, can we participate in an equal manner and contribute back? So this is basically, we also wanted some discussion, and since it's a very small group of people here, we could encourage some discussion. And this is I was more keen on laying the ground on which open education is important and why it's important, and use our own work at Tamarind Tree over the last decade as an example of how we've built an open education movement. But I'd really like now that Purvi takes over and shares a really proud example that we have from our own community of educators, people who started with a simple desire that every child has a book in their hand, and to see how open, how Creative Commons licensing and open education resources has pushed Storyweaver into becoming a very accepted, globally popular and powerful platform. So I'll hand over to Purvi now, and maybe we can take questions in about 20-25 minutes. So I'll just give you your presentation.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, and I will just, yeah, so you're the presenter now. I think it's gone to the last slide. So, yeah, you can start.
Yeah, just going to the first slide. Thanks, Michelle, for that
Yeah.
very passionate pitch for OER. It's definitely the need of the hour right now. I'm very happy to share our own work in this space and how Storyweaver is leveraging technology, open licenses, and collaboration to bridge the global book gap for children in India and globally as well. So, just to throw some stats, and these are global statistics. The reason why a lot of children are not reading at the level that they should be reading, and Michelle talked about inequity in access to good education. Our own work in this space has told us that there are three major reasons why children often don't read at the level that they should be reading. One is that they don't have access to enough books, and it's been shown through research that children who come in from underserved communities have access to very, very little amount of good quality books. And even if they do, they don't have it in the languages that they're able to read and understand. So even having sometimes these books is not really enough because they really can't really access the books in the true sense. And third, sometimes the books are available, the languages are available, but the cost or the price barrier is so high that often these schools or these communities can't afford to buy and buy many of these books for their environments. And so that's really the starting point of how do you get a book in every child's hand. And this is the problem space that we were operating in from where our digital work started. Before I get into how we did what we did, here's a fantastic story, and my kids loved this story while they were growing up. It's definitely Storyweaver's most popular story, Fat King Thin Dog, and this story is about a fat king and a thin dog. But let's see how many languages this fat king thin dog ended up speaking when we put him on Storyweaver, an open digital platform. So today, this book, 5 years down the line, is available in 213 versions in 102 languages, has got over 102,000 reads, and has been accessed from 82 countries. And all of this has been possible because we open license books on Storyweaver. And we created this collaborative community. We've distributed the agency across the entire ecosystem to come in, collaborate, create, co-create, and create this vast repository of books in mother tongue languages that they could use and redistribute and repurpose for their own requirements. Storyweaver is an initiative by Pratham Books. For those of you all who don't know, Pratham Books is a not-for-profit children's book publisher based out of India with a mission to see a book in every child's hand. And as I think Michelle also had some heavy-duty stats in her presentation, but in India itself, we have about 200 million children. So we really were operating from the fact that if we do want to see a book in every child's hand, if we do want to achieve the SDG 4 goals of equitable and inclusive education by 2030 for every child, have no child left behind, what's the fastest scalable way to do that? And for us, it was from moving from being only a publisher to being a publisher plus a platform and moving our entire content. So Pratham Books as a publisher had a lot of children's story books in Indian languages. All of that was digitized and put onto Storyweaver. And in 5 years, so we launched Storyweaver in September on International Literacy Day with 800 books in 24 languages. And today, through open licensing and collaboration, we are at about 25,000 plus books in 270 languages of the world. And a large part of these languages are marginalized languages. Sometimes we've even had communities come in where the first ever book was digitized and put on the platform. Cumulatively, the platform has had about a 50 million readership online and offline, and we've been accessed from over 150 countries globally. Just wait for the slide to come up. So what we've put together is a few strategies that Storyweaver adopted to ensure, that helped us actually build, maintain, and scale what we now call digital public goods. In fact, Storyweaver is one of the first digital public goods announced from India as part of the early reading category, and it was through the UN identified as one of the key areas that required intervention to achieve the SDG goals. So the first thing, of course, like I mentioned, we open licensed our content under the Creative Commons license. We chose the Creative Commons CC BY 4.0 license because it's the most liberal of all licenses. It allows everyone or anyone to adapt the content, version the content for their local use cases. And the 4.0 license also allows for commercial repurposing of content. And we were absolutely okay with that as a platform because, like we said, our mission was to see a book in every child, is to see a book in every child's hand. What I find really exciting about the story of Storyweaver is that not only as Pratham Books as a publisher, we were able to put out open content, but we actually advocated open licensing across a large community of publishers. So we had Room to Read, put out about 200 of their high quality titles on the platform under the open license. We've had publishers from Africa and Southeast Asia also put up content. And that is critical because the larger amount of high quality content that we have on the platform, the community has that many more high quality books to repurpose and translate and version. Another big thing that we did when we launched Storyweaver is we converted all the text into Unicode fonts. And what that means is as Pratham Books, we actually use some crazy amount of proprietary fonts in the print world. But the minute we were moving to digital, we wanted to ensure that every book can be repurposed and translated. And that can only happen if you're Unicode compliant. So it was a big step at that point in time in India as one of the first publishers to actually go Unicode compliant as well, but that's really helped us scale seamlessly to the 270 languages that are now available on the platform. And some of the languages are very, very complex when it comes to the scripts, but we've been able to kind of achieve that scale. We're also big proponents of open input tools. Of course, we also use some of the proprietary tools as well, but we've integrated Varnam and Quillpad, which allow translators to easily input into Indian languages. And we've recently just concluded a very nice project, which was a partnership between Google India AI research arm, IIT Madras, and Pratham Books Storyweaver, that created native input tools in two underserved languages, Maithili and Konkani, that have now gone live on Storyweaver. And what this allows is for translators to type seamlessly in their native language. Otherwise, they had to default. So if you're a Maithili user, you have to default to you typing in Hindi, but you're actually using Maithili words. We've also released a white label version of our entire platform under the MIT license, and we released that to Room to Read, and they build their own version of an open story platform in Indonesia. And post-pandemic, because pandemic also pushed everybody to, for larger digital adoption, they were able to scale their platform in several languages and other countries as well. We also open license our entire code base. So if anybody wanted to create and pull from our code base, we've kind of released that as well. The second thing is, I mean, we've got the tech in place, we've got the open licensing strategy in place, but Storyweaver would not have scaled to where it is right now if we didn't have the support of our community. And that a lot of that happened organically, but a lot of it was strategic as well. So we started publishing best practices for children's literature. We've created a lot of training and support through webinars and tutorials on how to translate children's literature. So what we understood in our 5-year journey is there are a lot of communities who may be able to translate well in their native language, but how do you make it relevant for children's literature? How do you make sure that the translation is level appropriate? So if you're translating a level 1 book from, say, English to Marathi, or from Marathi to, say, Korku or Pavri, how do you ensure that you retain that level of appropriateness is a skill, and our editorial team often comes in and gives these master classes. We've also developed, so with Uganda Christian University, we created this peer-to-peer review model where the students of this university actually translated in 10 Ugandan languages. And the first thing they did is they actually did a peer-to-peer review so that one more quality check happened on the translation. And then they brought in language professors who then further validated and vetted the quality of the translations. So these are some of the ways that we've tried to ensure that while being extremely open on the platform, because the platform allows anyone to come in, read books for free, translate books for free. So it is user generated content, and we need to ensure that we try and put out as many high quality books as we can. So these are some of the ways that we've ensured that the quality of the translations is maintained on the platform. And as our work started increasing with marginalized communities, we realized that the digital divide is real. There is issues of infrastructure, there is issues of device penetration. So to ensure that we have an inclusive approach to our stakeholders, the translation stakeholders, we released an offline translate module. So translators who have limited connectivity can come onto the platform, save the book that they want to translate, be offline, take enough time that they need to slowly translate, review their translation. And once they're very happy with the translation, all they need to is come in for a few minutes on the platform, be online, and publish their book. We also recently released the mobile translate version, and this was actually done because our work with marginalized communities made us realize that they don't have access to big devices like laptops and desktops, but most of them have access to Android devices with connectivity as well. So we released the mobile translate tool recently to empower these communities to translate and create access to books in marginalized languages. So it's really important that you always keep hearing and listening to your stakeholders, because then you can give back those tools to them, which they can help build more open resources and contribute more on the platform. And the third thing is always giving back. I think at Pratham Books and Storyweaver, we are so cognizant of the fact that we've been able to achieve this scale, and it is because of the community. So we often talk about our community or our star translators or our star authors, illustrators on blogs, on Twitter, on Facebook, and give them their due limelight that they definitely deserve for contributing to the cause of equitable access. And lastly, what we've done with Storyweaver is we've created this open platform and we've made it very modular. So you can come in and read. If you don't always have access, you can download PDFs. If you are an app and you're servicing, underserved children, you can also download EPUBs from the platform and use that as a starting point. We work with children. We work with organizations that work with children who are visually impaired, and they find the EPUB version so very easy to use because they can now very easily use that as a starting point to create braille books, which otherwise took them a long time to convert all the text in Unicode, etc., then create the braille versions. Just a few use cases on how users on the ground are using the platform. So the first use case that always warms my heart is this one about this is children who have gathered around educator translator, and they're reading a Santhali story. This is our work with an organization called Suchna in Birbhum, West Bengal. While the village is situated in West Bengal, these children speak Santhali Kora, which are tribal languages. Kora is only a spoken language. It didn't even have a written script. But these educators, what they did is they came onto the platform and took the Bengali books available on Storyweaver and translated it into Santhali and Kora. And this was the first time that children actually read a story in their mother tongue language. And that pride of being able to associate that the language that I speak at home is also a language that I can read is something that is irreplaceable. And that's really been a huge part of our journey in Storyweaver. The reason why this is such a powerful use case is because Suchna spent many years trying to do this in the offline world. So they would get English or Bengali books, then try and translate it using pen and paper. And it took them so many years to even produce a Santhali book. But when their educators came onto Storyweaver, it took them just about a few months, and we had about 50, 60 books in Santhali. Now we have about 200 books in Santhali and Koda. And the books are so useful in these environments that Suchna conducts, that they actually came back to us, got funding from a donor to print these books. Then they came back and said that now they've, the children have mastered reading in Santhali and Koda using the Bangla script. We can now move them to reading Bengali books. So then, they're now using the same children, the same cohort of children are now reading Bengali books on Storyweaver. And they also created bilingual books. So, one line in Bengali, one line in Santhali. And that's really how the transition of the bridge language helped the child from a mother tongue of Santhali Koda to Bengali, which is the medium of instruction in school. As we all know, school closures have really hit all of us, but even more where learning difficult, children are not learning at the right reading and writing at the right levels. The school closures are really going to set us back as a country and as a global economy many years behind. So with Storyweaver having all these open resources, we also move towards curated resources because we realized that educators needed that on the ground. And so we created a digital reading program. And right now with UNICEF in Maharashtra, we are doing a statewide dissemination via WhatsApp, where teachers every Saturday. So it's called Goshticha Shanivar, which is reading Saturdays or story Saturdays. And every Saturday, a link is sent to various WhatsApp groups and then disseminated to the parents as well. And children are reading stories every Saturday in Marathi, Urdu, and English. And a very sweet story just came in from the field about this little girl, Sambhavi. She's 6 years, she's diabetic. And she used to not like going to school very much because of the insulin shots, and it was painful for her. But ever since the Story Saturday started, she's been pestering her mother to say, can you call my teacher? I want to read the next story. Can I get it before Saturday, please? So her mother sent in a text to us saying that Sambhavi is so excited, and for the first time she's excited about school, and stories can do that, right? And which is why stories are a great medium towards literacy and reading acquisition. Lastly, we are also always looking at, across the global south, and those are the countries that require the most amount of investment in education, in infrastructure, in resources. So we are trying to see that as Storyweaver, we've created this open platform, we've created open resources. How can we now ensure that another country does not have to spend more money building the same things? So what we did is we've created a new product offering called a curated gateway, and any ministry of education, any government, any NGO working in any part of the world, working with children and literacy, can come and partner with us, and we will create this curated gateway where what you see here, you can see on the heading, the Director Danish Library. This is a library in Afghanistan. They work, they teach, they train teachers across Afghanistan who in turn then take elementary education ahead in that country. So they partnered with us because they wanted the reading program in Farsi and Pashto, something that we already had in English and other Indian languages. So we created all their users and teachers in Afghanistan to come in. Our site has been localized in Farsi because that's the language that the teacher understands and can navigate the site best in. And they've also helped us translate about 150, 200 books in Farsi and Pashto, and I'm now also translating the reading program. So this
Oh, Purvi, I think you've gone. Hello? We'll just wait for her to come back. Chirag, you can hear me, right? Okay, we'll just wait. I'll just
Hi.
quickly call her and see. Yeah, Indira, you're saying something?
Michelle, can you hear me? This is Purvi here.
Yeah, Purvi, we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
You can see, you will be able to see me very soon.
Yeah,
I
okay.
just
So,
want to make a quick check. Were you able to hear the Afghanistan story?
yes, we were. You just went off at the end, that's all.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So I
Yeah,
can.
you can continue. Yeah.
Oh, that was the last slide. So.
Okay. Okay, okay. Okay, so yes, yeah, so very nice presentation, and since we have been collaborators for so many years, very nice to hear about the Palghar Goshti, Shanivarcha Goshti, as well as Afghanistan. So, since we're a very small group, there's Amarjeet, Basil, Chirag, Dee, Frederick, Indira, Aruna, Rajiv, Sarita, Shweta, Suzette, and Zoya. Would any of you like to ask a question? Those of you who have a mic option can unmute. Those of you who are on listen only could use the public chat. And we can continue for the next 10 minutes. Purvi is available at Purvi at Pratham Books. I've sent you the email. And yeah, there was one question, Purvi, which came in the YouTube channel. Are all the Pratham books released in the NDLI repository of the Indian thing? Was one question.
Yes, actually, they have taken a lot of our books and they are available there. And not just the Indic languages, but even some of the international languages.
But not all, not the entire repository.
Yeah, not the entire repository.
Okay, so I'm just putting that in the YouTube. Yeah, and I think how do we scale up the idea of CC books, Frederick? Basically, at our end, I mean, wherever if you are a publisher, and I think you do some publishing, um, I mean, you need to push at your end. The books can't, in my opinion, this is how we struggled actually a lot, because we used to bulk download books from Storyweaver site and then upload it on our library server in the school prior to having good quality net. But Pratham Books and Storyweaver was giving us some options of technically, being able to sync, uh, like say we needed only English, Hindi, and Marathi, right? We don't want all the other miscellaneous languages. So in a local school with poor internet, there are technological solutions by which you can keep your library server updated. So that's the kind of options they have also been exploring with schools where there is no continuous access to internet. You want to elaborate maybe on that? Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle, sure. So, Frederick, that's a good question, and we've tried the pen drives as well, and that's a good solution because the low resolution PDFs are not more than 3-4 MB. So, you can actually have a large language repository that can be pushed out
Hmm.
via pen drives, and that's definitely a great solution. For a lot of our larger partners, we are also now working on several tech solutions so that, like Michelle was saying, it's not a painful book by book download. So if
Hmm.
anybody is interested, they can write into the Storyweaver ID or to me, and we can help get you those books faster as well.
Hmm. We had also explored, just for some of you who are interested, so we set up the library server on the Raspberry Pi, and that works on a micro SD card. So say we start off with say 5,000 books in English, Marathi, and Hindi, and we dispatch it to a Zilla Parishad school. Every time they need an upgrade, you can actually upgrade it at your end and just courier them a micro SD card, which they can just upgrade. So this e-library solution is something that we have been also dabbling quite a lot with. Yeah, so for schools with low internet, though, a lot of the internet issues now, since say the last couple of years, have really been sorted. Yeah, I think Shweta has a question. Yeah, a lot of the other
Yeah,
people are on listen only, so they may not be able to.
am I audible?
Yes, yeah, Shweta, a little louder, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Am I audible now?
Yes,
Is it better?
yes.
Yeah, so I am from Unmukt Foundation, and during this pandemic, we are using Story Weavers stories extensively to teach kids English online, and we are using it to not only to teach English but environment, social, economical issues, and social mental health also, and a few pieces of grammars also. So first of all, thanks for creating a Story Weaver and Pratham books. it is helping us a lot in very different way. But the challenge I would like to discuss is like, we are getting good feedback from kids, but like, and I personally believe that the best way to teach any language is through stories. But some of our volunteers, like, they are not convinced like how you can teach it through stories. And we, for to support them, we have created curriculum also, like, how we can support and convince people it is possible. But is there any program or any mentorship is there where, these volunteers can be mentored? You can teach how you can teach it through its stories, because these are not teachers, so they will not spend much time in it, right? For them, they need little help so that they can work. And this can go very on a very larger scale. If we can tap on volunteers, and everybody is spending only 2 hours and 3 hours in a week to teach a kid one on one, this can change the entire scenario. So yeah.
Yeah, Purvi, would you like to say? And I'd like to share our experience in the pandemic of how we are using your books. Yeah.
Yeah. Shweta, thank you so much for the kind words on the work that we do. See, one thing that I'd like to say is that, if you're working in elementary education and foundational literacy, one of the things that we've learned is that it's really important for children to hear. And what we've learned, and there is research around this as well, that children from underserved backgrounds actually end up hearing several million words lesser than children from privileged backgrounds. And that itself is the first step to why they are not learning at the stage that they should be learning. So for that, we have released a product called Read Alongs on the platform. You may have already seen it, which has stories in English, Hindi, Marathi, Kannada. And if you're working with children and literacy acquisition for English language, then I would highly recommend using that, because it takes care of diction, pronunciation, and the child can use it independent of the teacher as well. So that would be one of the recommendations. And these are also available in offline mode, so you can save the read alongs in your offline library in Storyweaver and access it even when you don't have internet access. Other than that, I think reading program is the other thing that we had mentioned, that which is structured. So we've taken popular themes and we've leveled, and within the level also we've said that if you're a grade 1 child, start with this book. So I would highly recommend looking at the reading program, because it was actually designed with this feedback and insight from the ground. But literacy acquisition is a big space, so it's very difficult to say that if you do this like this, you'll definitely get here. So I would say, and we don't really work with teacher training, and I think Michelle might be better equipped to answer that aspect of the question.
So actually, one of the simple things that you could deploy, Shweta, at your end, which is what we do, is that we get volunteers on board to take classes in various subjects. But for the English language, we basically call the language classes story reading. And the volunteer, obviously coming from educated, privileged background, finds it very easy to learn us, read up a story and, then build a discussion around it. So we have a package in the sense that we'll take a story, weave a story around it. The volunteer is supposed to create a quiz or some digital activities or something that's interesting, and then of course do a read aloud and discussion during the storytelling happening exactly on this platform. And we find volunteers getting into that kind of a mode quite easily. So the story is available, they can go and check it on Storyweaver. The levels are organized, we suggest which level for which age group, and then they conduct it by performing it in a nice way, doing screen share as well as and also add digital activities, which makes the learning more interesting. So a quiz after that or a forum after that. Yeah, so there are a couple of more questions. Yeah, so Anand is asking me, I think, that whether we are looking at. So yeah, what we had done is that we had released TreeBN in the public domain for any school or any institution to download, and we were hoping that anyone could, just like you download Windows or you download Ubuntu or you can download that and install it. A lot of it is not dependent on us. This is all stuff that we've learned from the internet and the open source community. So you could also do it. And Yeah, Tanishka's adventures. I want to contribute more for Pratham and for Tamrantry also. Yes. So if you go to our website, I think these are questions coming from the YouTube. If you go to our website, we have a volunteer registration button, and you can register and say you are interested in English and doing read along. And then we have an orientation program, so you could come into the orientation program and then start doing English reading with our students. Uh, yeah. Do you welcome volunteers to contribute to the read alongs? Do you look for certain qualification? No qualifications at all. You just need to give time. At least if we're talking about the Tamrantry volunteer program, you just need to give a lot of time and effort, and obviously perform the read along very well. That's also critical. Yeah. Yeah. So Dr. Sushma Purvi is saying that she's been reading stories to her daughters since she was 1 year old from Storyweaver. Now she's also writing and translating. And I think that's been one of the successes of Storyweaver, that parents who read to their children feel they want to contribute back, and they have translated and leveled and re-leveled, which is, as I said in the beginning of the session, that the Storyweaver platform is really a source of pride and success for us as a community of educators, to see how the community of parents and children and so on can actually contribute. Yeah. Yeah, you so those who are interested in volunteering and actually reading out Pratham books can come to our platform, check out tamrantry.org and register. Many of you can happily and please go directly to Storyweaver and re-level, translate, and contribute as you like. Yeah. No Frederick schools are stuck to using textbooks. We abandoned all the English textbooks and do all our English from Storyweaver's content, at least for up to class 4 5. Once the English becomes faster, one of our requests to them has been that the content for the older level is less, but actually they get requests for content for younger children. So we actually, from class 1 kindergarten to class 4 and 5, have depended hugely. All the tribal children speak English and read English because of Storyweaver's content, not because of SSC textbook or NCRT textbooks. So we find their stories far more appealing, more contextual for rural children, more rooted in village life, and so on, and also having other content. So I think with the adoption and the collaborations that Pratham Books and Storyweaver is doing with different governments, not just in Maharashtra, they have tie-ups in other parts of India. I think slowly this would get more and more formalized. I would hope that language learning is not restricted to a textbook, and language learning must be out there. I mean, Purvi, you want to add to that, how this, because that's something you guys are doing more in terms of government. We are just a small setup. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's both ways, right, Michelle? There is this strong pull towards the textbooks, and then you always find how stories are integrated into language learning. In fact, we're working right now with Central Square Foundation to create a foundation literacy product in for Hindi. So what they've done is we've gotten pedagogy experts, and they've created this level framework, and they've curated books from Storyweaver, created 6 levels, and it's a guideline to teachers for use in the classroom to learn Hindi. So it's a really nice offering, and we are hoping to go live by January or February early next year with that offering. So I think that, and also the new NAP guidelines also has a strong focus on stories and storytelling for elementary education. So hopefully the winds will change in the coming months and years.
Yes, yes. One more question, Purvi, to you. How do authors or publishers contribute to Storyweaver collection, and is that possible? What is the license required, and what are the level of books that you're looking at? And then Rajiv has a question, and I think then we can stop. Yeah.
Yeah. So as Pratham Books, we are always getting manuscripts, and we have a process in place for the editors to look at manuscripts, evaluate, and decide what gets published. On Storyweaver, of course, anybody can come in and create storybooks. They can author. We have a large image library of, I think, upwards of 27,000 high quality images. So you can pick up images and create your own story as well. By default, whatever you publish on Storyweaver goes under the CC BY 4.0 license, which does mean that it can be picked up by anyone for any use, as long as they attribute you correctly as the author of that work. The kind of gaps that we always see on the platform is, like Michelle was saying, there's always a need for very early readers. We've also started creating a large library of STEM books. So, if you have expertise in that area, welcome to create those books, and also just stories that cover, social emotional learning angles, empathy. They're all always popular on the platform.
Yeah, perfect. Rajiv, you can go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Rajiv. We can't hear Rajiv, right? Yeah, Frederick, this is one of the reasons that I requested Purvi to come, because CC India needs to build more collaborations with the people who are already practitioners, who have understood the licensing, who are building their entire model on this, open knowledge. And Purvi, Savitri is not here as the India chapter lead, but you please request you and the entire team at Story Weaver to register as an organization as well as individuals into both the CC India as well as the CCGN, which is a global network. And we are really giving a push in India to build a wider community across, not just for elementary, but higher, any kind of open Creative Commons work, whether it's music, education, films, and so on. Yeah, Rajiv, if you have a question, we'll take your question and then we can end. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. I think he's speaking, but we can't hear. Rajiv, are you speaking? Because it shows that your mic is. Do you want to just use the public chat?
Yeah. Good evening, Michelle. This is Indira.
Yes, Indira. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I have two questions. One is, how do we partner with Pratham on Story Weaver? Purvi was showing something Afghanistan and all. So, what are the advantages of this? Do we get, as ours is also an NGO, so do we get access, and can we pick up and build, say, for example, align with class one, level one? I see all these level one, level two, and all. Aligning with class one and class two, is it possible?
Yeah, Purvi, you can unmute and take that. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. If you could repeat that, Indira.
Yeah, my question is, if we partner as an NGO with Pratham on Story Weaver, what are the advantages? Say, for example, if I want to align this level one, level two, and all for this class one, class two, and all syllabus and all, so
Hmm.
will that platform allow us to build something related so that I can integrate this with my LMS, that is Moodle we have been using?
So
Right.
actually, I can answer that. See, Indira, they are releasing everything in the public domain. They have got a reading level that their academicians or their educators have decided that these books, which are these number of words, is for level one, level two. Now, when a school like Tamarind Tree, we actually looked at their four levels. We
Mm-hmm.
added some stuff of ours and actually created a foundational literacy benchmark based on their levels, because we would have books to rely on, as well as
Okay.
on some of the Maharashtra government learning outcomes that they expect, that at class
Mm-hmm.
1, class 2, class 3. So if schools are open, obviously reading literacy is foundational, it's basic, right? It's common sense at the end of the day.
Okay.
Because you have first generation learners, your level cannot say be compared to a Bombay school where the child is going with so every school actually has to customize their foundational literacy levels and what is the minimum expected. If we,
Mm-hmm.
now so we took their level 1, 2, 3, 4 and actually adapted it for our learning outcomes and
Okay.
matched it with Maharashtra government. But that was us, and we wanting to take things like that. If a school is open, like your NGO wants to recommend to a school that
Got it.
these are clear learning outcomes, that at this age level 1 आना चाहिए, this age level 2 tak आना चाहिए, these are the books already been designed. Private schools can very well do it, and so can of course government, but they can very well incorporate it, or at least an English teacher can incorporate, or a Marathi teacher or Hindi or Telugu teacher can incorporate at her level.
Mm-hmm.
So the partnership is for you to decide how you want to use it for your benefit. They are putting stuff out.
Okay.
They are not authorized to tell you that your children are literate.
No, no. What I'm thinking is, I'm thinking on these lines. Say, for example, if the platform, some open education platforms allow us to have our own, what say, curriculum aligned or syllabus aligned resources. That is identifying some books, and these are essential reading, optional reading kind of thing? Is it possible? That is
Yeah.
my question.
Indira, maybe you can just write to me separately. We are going to be releasing a few features on the platform, which will
Mm-hmm.
allow you to, create your own bookshelves,
Yeah.
curate books, and they could be grade wise, they could be language wise,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
share it with, your teachers of that grade across, wherever you're working. So why
Okay.
don't, if you can write to me, then I'll put you in touch
Sure.
with, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, Rajiv is left, right? I think Rajiv had a question and okay, he's still typing. Indira Hemant says you should create your own platform and you can create your own bookshelf with it, yeah, on your LMS. We'll take last Rajiv's question and I think it's already 6:45.
And madam, to start with, I'm Aruna.
Right.
To start with, I to work with NGOs, and all the people are, all the children are in the villages, and they don't have even a, I mean, mobile also to access that. Only a few have mobiles, and in that case, only if they have that net facility and all, only they can do this, right?
Purvi, you can unmute and share.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the first point, you will need some internet connectivity, but we have invested heavily in a technology called PWA that allows users to save many books in their offline library and access it even when you don't have internet. But yes, you would need some device and you would need some
Yes.
initial internet connectivity to kind of do this. And like I think there was a question earlier on how else it can be done, then you'd have to download, put it on a pen drive or in some other format. We've also had interesting use cases like in Tamil Nadu. We had this one community library where what they did is they downloaded, took black and white printouts. Sometimes they took color printouts, laminated it so that the book could stay for longer in their library environment. So we've had those kind of use cases
Can
as
do
well,
that.
where digital was absolutely not possible.
So it helps in improving their language, right? Because not only the village children, even the children who go to good schools also, they are very poor in English. Actually,
Hmm.
they just memorize the questions what they have given and just write in the exams. That's all. So I think there is a long gap in every language. It's like that. Not only English, even Hindi, Telugu, everything goes on like that. So I think to start with, how we can start this, madam? I mean, because I'm new to this, I know Pratham books, but I'm new to this. Actually, Indira gave this link and I joined the session.
Right. So one thing is that you would need to encourage and push children or their families to make sure they have some device at home, and most of them, even in rural India, do have. And once they have the device, as Purvi is suggesting, they can download books into the offline library and also make have it possible to read it as and when they like. The second most and traditional and not very great route is the pen drive route, where teachers download it at their home in a particular location. When they go to the school, they would install, take the pen drive and install 100 books at one shot in the school. The third option is that, as we were saying, there are things that people like us are trying to promote, that we set up a small e-library for you with 5,000 books to start with, and we ship it to you and you just plug it in, and the whole room has access to all the books that she has offline. So there are options, there are technological solutions that are possible, and as you go along the way, you will come up with them. We are available for any kind of input. I think you have joined the Telegram group as well.
Yes.
So if you're interested further more from me on this e-library and box, I can share with you. And Purvi is available on email also. So also the platform is quite self-explanatory. Many things that you can use on Storyweaver platform. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Purvi went off. I think we can end this session. It has been a nice and small group, which is often nice. And we are available. Some of the CC India team members like Indira, me, or Frederick, and Savitri are available on the Telegram group. We will be conducting more sessions on Saturdays, and I think there's going to be one more on CC licenses and how you can understand what are the CC licenses. So hopefully we will see you in that one. And thanks a lot, Purvi. I think Purvi has got bumped off, but thanks a lot, everyone. I think we can end this session. Yeah, thank you, Shweta. Thank you, Fred. Thanks, Rajiv, Amarji. Thank you for coming, joining. I think we can end this. Hemant, you can stop the live feed. Yeah. Okay. Bye bye, everyone.